Hello everyone, this is the Shientist, and this is another the LabZtorm Effect audio podcast and part of that series. This is going to be the final audio and podcast in this particular series or series 2, and this is going to be around research management, and it will be a review, and I'm going to talk about sort of project management, traditional techniques versus novel models of working, and it will be an overview of this subject. And as previous audios and podcasts have been, this is going to be in keeping with another Storm Robotics production. So I'm going to sort of provide an overview of this subject: project management, traditional techniques versus novel models of working, and provide an overview by sort of providing context in relating to a project that a sort of an article that I sort of developed as part of some previous work, and this the way I'm going to provide the understanding is basically read or provide the understanding through context in an abstract. So I'm going to give some background, the aims or objectives of this particular work, some context in relating to theory or the project management and the theoretical field around that, a bit of context around different strategies, and then provide some conclusion, just a conclusion on this particular subject and some recommendations. And then I'm also going to provide some main points, and kind of like take home points really on how to sort of project manage and in keeping and in line with research management. And this I have to say, listeners, is not the easiest kind of context I can really relate to, because it's more, as you know, the Shientist is more about looking into aspects of and delving into areas around and focuses around healthcare and health research and health service research. That's those sort of entities are kind of in my wheelhouse. But basically, when talking about or highlighting things about or even just reading around things like things that are related to project management, immediately I personally feel that there's sort of a business entity as part of the process, and also where when we, for example, use the word project management, it can for all intents purposes can relate to things that are focuses that relate to target driven areas of in target driven focuses in around different industries, for example. But I'm not going to I'm going to do my best actually to bring this understanding so it applies and can be sort of relatable across different focuses, so that different streams and etc., so that those who want to know how to project manage can apply these sort of techniques and sort of novel models of sort of organizing aspects of their projects, etc. And no matter what sort of project is sort of one is sort of undertaking or one is getting involved in. So I'm going to provide a background first, so so you get a feel for where I'm coming from. So depending upon organization and strategies, project management, or PM, varies. There are various ways that project management and even tasks can be sort of approached and also managed. There are a variety of implements, including traditional bookkeeping, desktop software, and cloud technology. I'm sure people would know that there are lots of different ways to kind of timeline different aspects of projects as well. And this can allow individuals or teams to project plan effectively and achieve overall missions and sort of aims and objectives. Project management is becoming increasingly important to organize and meet timeframes and in keeping with demands of routine and day-to-day. So in this context, and in relating to this, it's also about having the appropriate sort of mindset. An agile mindset, for example, is encompasses a set of attitudes or has a set of sort of roots and a set of a sort of a flexible approach to supporting different projects, no matter what is whatever the task or the project might be. So these an agile mindset, there are sort of definitions of what that might include. So these might include respect, having ability to collaborate or and wanting to have collaborations, improvement and wanting to improve oneself, learn and develop around areas and focuses, take ownership and focus on delivering sort of um, uh, delivering on those tasks and management, and having the ability to adapt and to change. The mindset allows any individual or teams to effectively plan projects and achieve outcomes. And some of that context is highlighted in work by Yunus and team in 2018, and Moshiki and Maschetti in 2018 as well. And managing or project management is becoming increasingly important to organize timeframes, as I mentioned, and some of that context is from works by Anand Tatamula in 2008, and Asquin and team in 2010, and Bullen in 2000 and team in 2009. Global spending on project costs global spending on projects costs both academia and industry billions annually. The reason is perhaps quite obvious. At least to some extent, projects depending on what the aims and objectives are around them, are aimed to in a broad sense, in a broad sense way, are aimed to optimize a calculated time points, and not just to ensure projected outcomes are met, but also to conform to organization efficiency. Projects are also implemented for business capital expansion and the management of time to market goals of particularly new projects. I told you guys, didn't I? This is not my area, but I did do some writing around this, and this is works by Burke 1990, and Darrell and team in 2010 highlighted that. And despite advances in the project management discipline and profession, so when I say project management discipline, I mean project management again. Project management and task managing applies to everything and all kinds of industries and all focuses really. But in this context, I found that despite the advances in project management as a specific discipline and a profession, the shared experience informs that numerous projects can collapse, and that underscores the importance and the need to improve sort of project management processes to sort of advance and enhance areas of practice and sort of meeting objectives and so forth. A vast body of project management knowledge has developed in recent times. However, history suggests, though, that irrespective of replacing traditional techniques and some positive developments, including sort of project management technology tools that are sort of pretty much readily available, such uptake around them is not always enough to respond to today's organizational challenges, and works by Darrell and team in 2010, and even works by Nidifa and Dolan in 2005 highlight some of that, as does Williams as well in 2005. So this so that's some background, and so some background context, and I'm now going to highlight some sort of sort of the premise or the aims of objectives of what I try to do through providing some basis through this work. Aims of this work particularly were to provide, or had been to provide, a review of generally of what project management is, and the sort of traditional techniques versus the novel models of working. And this then prompts me to just give some understanding really around project management. What is it, more specifically? So the specific reasons that prompt organizations to consider project management are not always easy to pinpoint. Everyone and every organization, whether within organizations there are individuals who are having to project management, or teams that are project managing for different things, to meet different focuses and from different varying perspectives. Everyone is having to implement an areas of project management, to sort of manage even their aspects of their day-to-day, if not entirely, even if not entirely, a sort of research managing, or even in sort of, for example, business managing. However, that being said, it is one of the most project managing is one of the most important mechanisms whereby companies or individuals or teams can structure elements of work and processes to achieve positive results or outcomes. There's a few authors that sort of have highlighted understanding in that context. Asquin again in 2000, and team in 2010, another author, Basilia, and team in 2001. The project management approach is a preferred method whenever a team or teams want to deal with one-time defined projects, such as introduction or introducing sort of a new product or installation of a technology, project managing around certain jobs, and of course where healthcare research is concerned, even project managing aspects of that. And the tasks that are part of those sort of robust projects tend to be complex, or can be complex, and can involve sort of interdependence of several entities, and this all play a part and role with regard to the ensuring that that project can come through fruition. And there's publications that highlight paper publications by Bogdan in 2011 and Clark in 2010 that give some examples of the basis of why certain project management routes are probably more advantageous than others. The rewards for successful project managing are quite and this goes without saying, whether it's individuals or teams. They're quite the rules are of applying certain areas of project managing are can be quite appealing. One-time tasks can be accomplished with minimum interruption of routine business. Chances of meeting costs, schedule and performance targets can also be enhanced and improved. Projects are inherently, and I'm sure listeners would know with what they're with the kinds of projects that they're doing, that inherently they can be quite diverse and quite dynamic, and over the duration in which those projects and tasks kind of develop, can take various diversify further, and that might prompt individuals and teams to use, for example, more than one project management technique or model of working. Changing project management strategy is important depending upon what objectives and time frame need to be met. And there's actually some really good paper publications that highlight that as well, relating to strategies and strategizing. So there's a paper by Cordoba and team in 2012, and Darrow in 2010, and there's a whole host of publications that relate this that entity. The conflict between traditional or functional management attitudes and project management and project management is sometimes perhaps too great to permit implementation without considerable upheaval within a company or within an organization. And make no mistake that whether it's a small task or a intermediate task or a larger task, or and the same in relating to actual project, there will be differences and indifferences between people within actual organizations, and even within potential cross collaborations if there's more than one more than one senior individual, for example, leading aspects of the work. of particular projects, etc. So obviously bear that in mind, but I'm sure listeners are probably all too familiar. And it is important that any differences in team efforts are discovered and sort of neutralized really and truly before any work progresses. And this includes differences in project management practices, work ethics, and beliefs, since all of these have an impact on practices, productivity, and meeting project management goals or task managing. It is therefore critical for any project manager or supervisor, etc., to be conscious of those around him or her, so that strategy can be adaptable, and can be sort of molded into a different way, so that there is the task or the main project can be fulfilled either way. And so in relating to that, this then allows those senior sort of figureheads or those colleagues who are traditionally sort of used to taking on several projects at a time. They can achieve sort of best practice and identifying strategies accordingly, so that the objectives can be met. Now, I'm going to provide some context around project management in relating to the sort of the theoretical field. I won't delve into this too much, and then a bit around strategies as well. Alongside the growth of sort of organizational project management research, the increasing use of desktops, computers, or even devices in daily work life has given rise to a sort of a second generation of operations research devoted to sort of not just for relating to an actual project being developed, but for example, but also almost devote a whole new effort to the desktops or the computer facilities, for example, and the applications that they house, i.e., for example, the software as well as the hardware that individuals or teams use themselves, that also prompts almost a link really with regard to research devoted to applications and expertise around systems for projects to be fulfilled, and also allowing project management to be linked and integrated with user control and data, and for example data keeping and there's strategies. There are strategies to prompt that. The theoretical field of project management can be perhaps described in terms of planning, controlling, and evaluation theories. And on that note, there is some context from works by Matter and team in 2012, Meredith and Mantle in 2009, Muller and Turner in 2010, and a few others. And all theories relating to project management share some basic assumptions on the nature of the theories on themselves, and have sort of an empirical basis, with with a view of the project as also being part of an inquiry. Now that might sound a bit complex in some way, but if you think about it, it's actually quite linear. So basically, where, for example, you have let's say you have an individual or a teams, whichever way you want to put this in, put this use this example for your own selves, is basically where, if you're using project management tools and have to apply different sort of scores or tabs, for example, to ensure that the certain aspects of what is being, for example, developed, whether it's sort of part of one team or part of a collaborative effort, etc., etc. The project management aspect is also part of the in one way or another, is also part of the end sort of product. So if someone was to develop I don't know, the next software for helping to helping or supporting researchers to analyze certain data, and how they should for example, statistically analyze quantitative or even qualitative data, let's say. Even the nature of the actual approach and the software, and how the organizational aspects of that data analyses and statistical analysis took place. For example, the project management aspect is going to be part of the the strategy, and even aspects of the theory, so that the work shows, and so it shows really that individuals and teams that collaborated, or where individuals might have done work on their own, that the project management and the toolkit used and implemented, that is all part of a sort of a robust effort. So theory, though it sounds quite probably dull and quite mundane, and we don't really we don't really, generally speaking, we don't really ever sort of have that as part of our forefront when we're thinking about our when we think about, you know, the for example, an end product or whatever, whether it's to have actual physical product or sort of produced, or it's something else. Basically, we don't really think about the theoretical aspects, and so what I'm saying here, at least from the literature, it says that it has that there's a whole archetype around this in itself. All theories share some basic assumptions on the nature, on the theories themselves, and again, and as I mentioned, the project and the end product is whatever is produced. That also the theories and the project management toolkits, etc. They form part of that, form part of that particular end product as well. Especially when it comes to, for example, if there's organizations out there and they have a physical product or whatever there is, you know, companies and organizations do to develop their work. If they wanted that work to be highlighted in any way, then and for example, it might be, for example, I don't know, for example, to highlight that in some sort of case study, or you know, in you know, as a front cover to a particular in a particular journal or something like that, then it may well be important to have some of that sort of theoretical aspect to ensure that whatever is being highlighted is deemed more has a more sort of robustness to that. So projects as timelines, projects as timeline sequences are usually divided into three distinct stages. So there's a stage one is sort of like a development sort of stage. Stage two is about implementation, and then stage three is about termination. So that's basically it's almost, we've all heard, for example, the phrase end to end. So basically, in relating to project management and even task management, in a sort of kind of a roundabout way, this is basically where sort of an equivalent where the development, implementation, and termination are kind of in keeping and in relating to end to end, where if you have a physical product that's being produced for some to meet a particular requirement or a need, then that there would have been an end-to-end entity to meet that requirement from a physical perspective, for example. But from a project management perspective, end-to-end is basically seeing something from development, implementing it, into implementation, and then and termination, as in the project. So basically, once the project has finished, a project management element has finished, or ended, then there's closure or there's termination. Development in its turn is usually further divided into conceptualization and planning. In the traditional project management model, these stages are sequential. The implementation of a project is always assumed to be preceded by development and succeeded by termination. So following this ideal internal project logic, the theoretical field of project management can be described in relating to planning, controlling of evaluation, can be described in terms of planning, controlling and evaluation theories, and there's works by Meredith and Mantell in 2009, and Muller and Turner in 2010, and a few others. There are then particular strategies, and I won't delve into this too much, and that is that well-structured project management strategies can provide better organization of information from the time something is created until it's no longer needed, and or eliminated if there is technical leadership and for example technology competence. So I'm going to and there is a lot around strategies for project management, but several authors have sort of commented on this. Suffice to say that there's a whole sort of body of contribution of kind of understanding around this particular area, but suffice to say that information can be shared in electronically in integrated sort of systems, transferred by word of mouth or lost in scribbled notes or in a folder. Well-structured project management strategies can provide better organization of information from the time from the time it's created until it's no longer needed, and also every project requires clarification of aims and objectives, identifying actions needed to reach those particular objectives, and establishing critical points of milestones en route, estimation of time available required to achieve the milestones, etc., and also best way to document completion of sub-objectives, and how best to disseminate or summarize project successes. Strategies have sort of been highlighted, as I mentioned, by sort of quite a few, well, there's several authors that have highlighted that, and I'll mention a few of those, but there is when it comes to strategizing aspects of project management, there is a model of information technology, or linking with competence with sort of other components. So the model of information technology, for example, that relates to having explicit knowledge around, for example, technology applications, systems development, management of IT, and access to IT knowledge. And then there's tacit IT knowledge, which relates to having experience and cognition. So experience has three main sort of subdivisions. For example, personal use of IT, IT projects, and management of IT. And then cognition relates to having an understanding of process, and views of process, and vision of the role of IT. So there's sort of I guess different. You could say there's different sort of dimensions to the strategy as well, generally speaking. And I'm going to just highlight now, for example, the sort of the crux of this, and which was really about traditional techniques versus novel models of working. Traditional methods of project management have included, like for example, pen to paper, note-taking, Gantt charts or milestones, audio recording, wall calendars, organizations, organizers. For example, the listeners may even remember the days of having and they're still around, I think, like in some places around the world, like for example filofaxes, organizers, diaries, sort of logbooks, and even well, I don't know if these still exist, but in literature it has been highlighted. For example, discs and microfilms, and other medium. Obviously, since then, there's also cloud technology has advanced the way individuals and teams project manage. A few cloud-based systems include, for example, and I'm not going to delve into these too much, but I'm sure listeners will be quite familiar with some of these. For example, there's Trello, there's Slack, there's OneNote, there's Dropbox, there's Skype, there's for example Google as well. These are just some of the sort of novel, at least models of sort of working, and because they're sort of mainstream now, I guess, or they're used in different ways and quite routinely. They're also agile. These are also agile methods of sort of task and project managing. Now, with that in mind, there is again quite a sort of a body of literature that focuses around those things, around these sort of traditional techniques versus the sort of more novel models of working, and I'm not gonna delve into that, but what I will do, though, listeners, I will read out a few references or where you can find out more at your own sort of time. I will highlight some understanding in relating to what I found, though, in kind of a summary sort of focus. So information communication technology and partnerships are also considered vital influences as part of the project management effort, in the context of problems attributed to failures associated with project management as well. There's actually quite a bit of literature to say how that also highlights how project management has or can fail, or doesn't, it's not as effective as it should be, because of the role that projects have, because of the way that potentially how organizations have not perhaps experimented with the sort of the some of the traditional versus the novel, and even potentially the other way around. So it's important to have a good sort of mix in that context. So motivating factors that can lead to sort of positive project managing, even task managing, sharing and team efforts, and having sort of effective sort of communication can and should help ensure there is a focus around particular tasks and project managing. Project management is usually focused on classical functions such as planning, organizing, and controlling, and both management and leadership are actually important to bring that to bring a particular project through to fruition. The proliferation of access and easy access to information communication technology, cloud technology, or space to project manage over the past sort of decade has created opportunities for public and corporate sectors actually to adapt and implement originality to sort of workflow routines compared to previous generations. That's something that I think we can all kind of relate to in at least one way or another. Mobile cloud computing is actually becoming more popular now. So, for example, I mentioned, for example, Dropbox, and I've mentioned Slack, for example, and these cloud technologies have sort of apps like that are linked to them and offer additional space to save particular files, and to also project manage or task manage sort of in different ways, and so they're becoming quite popular and have been quite popular, especially more so perhaps though by those in I suppose the tech sort of world, and in organizations, given that apps are developed, can be developed remotely over the internet, using mobile cloud technology or mobile sort of computing, can allow speed and flexibility, and probably the swift delivery of sort of a sort of a product that is being focused on. So individuals and teams can now take advantage to implement sort of different methodologies around project managing and tools to project manage in everyday working, and to help sort of task and project manage across several several focuses at any one time, and having that also allows, for example, teams and colleagues, individuals at different, for example, sites, to view the same information or understanding and context, even though they may not be in the same people might not be in the same sort of vicinity. Now, I'm just going to make a few points relating to I guess some sort of a take home point as part of this work. Applying novelty, I suppose, can have positive impact on sort of project managing, task managing, and sort of service developments. Creativity sort of adds rigor and integrity to project management, to project managing and project to the missions and aims and objectives around whatever that a particular project might be about. So that's sort of the sort of final point I wanted to make on that around this audio and this podcast. I am going to highlight a few. I will highlight a few further references. And that is there's a paper publication by Adams and Campbell in it's quite an old paper, but it's quite good. I mean, when I was doing this, when I was looking up this work and sort of reflecting on it and thinking how best to share this with listeners, I look back at some of the writing around this, and I thought, though some of the references might be a little bit dated, they're still quite good. So there's a paper publication by Adams and Campbell in 1988, and it's titled "Roles and Responsibility of the Project Manager." Sorry, that's a book publication, and it's published in it's been published by the Project Management Institute. So feel free to check that out. There's the paper publication by Asquin and colleagues in 2010, "When Project-Based Management Causes Distress at Work," International Journal of Project Management, and again, that's it. That was published in 2010. There's a paper publication by Bogdan in 2011, American, Asian and European scientists and practitioners' view on information communication technology, project managers, soft skills, and that was published in Journal of Modern Accounting and Auditing, and then there's the paper publication by Cordoba Cordoba and Peaky in 2012, facilitating project management education through groups as systems. It was published in the International Journal of Project Management, and there's quite a few actually around this particular piece of work. There's another one that I will highlight actually, which is Turner in 2003, projects and project management, and it was in a book publication by Turner and colleagues. It was a handbook of project management, and it's a UK book publication. And then finally, I'm just gonna read out another one by Zhu, that's ZHU. In 2006, it's again a little bit an older one, but it's quite a good sort of reference, and that's it's due in 2006, and it's a research report, success criteria for projects, and it was proceedings from the 20th IPMA World Congress on Project Management, so feel free to check that out. But whichever project management tool or sort of way or you use, obviously what works for one sort of teams or versus individuals, or vice versa, in one industry might not be appropriate or applicable or at all applicable in another industry, etc. So that's something that we that everyone should get a bit of wanted to make sure that everyone gets a bit of understanding, at least some of the basis of the sort of the academic aspect around that. Ultimately, individuals and teams should implement really a mix between traditional techniques and novel models of project management to meet best practice, and that is something hopefully we can all kind of agree on. I'm going to leave it like that now. I hope you enjoyed this series. This has been the Shientist in series 2 on the LabZtorm Effect. This was about research management, and obviously project management is around that, and this has been another Storm Robotics production. Thanks for listening. Take care. Have a good one.